Hello, everyone from Chelsea Fan TV. My name is Alex. Welcome to 3 Points Perspective. We are back in business, even though I actually think this is the second video since the season started, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
Second one. But yeah, listen, lots has happened since we last spoke. As always, drama at Chelsea. We're here to talk about it. Joao Felix is back. So we're going to talk about him. You got the Sterling situation, lots of transfer news and rumours. And, we could touch on the Man City game and cfctvyt as well. I mean, there's just no shortage of topics, really. How are you guys doing?
Yeah,
Yeah, good.
mate.
Yeah.
All right, mate. Season's underway. Back into the swing of things. Yeah, let's see what happens.
I mean, to be honest with you, from my side, I always said if we sign Joao Felix and Osimhen, I would have a genuine belief that we can challenge, not for the Premier League, but for top four. I mean, that just goes to show how competitive the league is.
Challenge, mate. We should be getting top four if we sign Osimhen.
No, that's what I'm saying. We should be getting there.
Yeah.
But without Osimhen, I'm still not there, to be honest with you. But we've added Joao Felix. So Fabrizio Romano said anywhere between 34 and 38 million pound. I think that's actually quite a good deal. I mean, you look at what Atletico spent on him; it was almost 100 million more. So I don't think it's a terrible deal for Chelsea. People like to talk about his end product. As a player, I think that we struggle enough with end product, and any additional quality is absolutely welcome. And then this kind of connects with Sterling. We'll talk about it later. But I certainly think that Felix is an improvement on what we've had. I think that he buys into the structure. We know he gets on with the dressing room. I mean, we never had any issues when he was here. And, he knows the club and he wants to be here. So that's the most important thing. But I mean, Nina, what's your take on this whole transfer?
I think I'm a little bit more indifferent to it as opposed to maybe some other fans who are a bit more excited. Purely just because I didn't really think we needed Joao Felix, to be perfectly honest. Obviously, I know we'll talk about Raheem Sterling and whether there's a possibility that he leaves, then I guess maybe it makes a bit more sense. But I just think, and I still kind of think that there was perhaps more of a push into the fact that, with Gallagher and that kind of deal being put on hold, I think that we kind of went for Joao Felix just to make that much simpler for both clubs, sort of, because he was never really on our radar, never really was discussed. We didn't really want to sign another winger or a 10 or a player of that profile. And I was firmly kind of in and always have been for a striker. I think a lot of us are. And if we don't sign one, then again, it's just a bit like a disappointment for me this window. But again, I'm open to it now. I mean, he's obviously signed. He's an easygoing player, like you said, never had any issues. But I just kind of worry, is he a first teamer? What's the plan with him? Is he just going to be kind of like a bench option or someone you kind of give minutes to in other comps and stuff? But yeah, it didn't really make sense to me. But I mean, it's not an awful lot of money. He could come decent for us. And like you say, at least that there is that kind of affinity there with the player that we've already had at the club. But yeah, I can't say I'm overly excited, but I'm warming up to it, I suppose.
I think it's massively important that any player just wants to play for the club, right? And I think this is a question mark that we've had with Osimhen as well. Is he going to buy into the wage structure? And that, I think, is the decisive factor. Because if we don't get Champions League, we're not going to attract players anyway. So if we can attract players now when we have Conference League, I think we're doing very well. There's only so long that your pull as a club can work when you're not getting results. So there's very few clubs that can still do that. I mean, Liverpool don't have pull, in my opinion, anymore. United, they're probably the only club that I can think of in the Premier League that still have that pull. And we are in that position as well. But if we miss out on Champions League or even European football next season, I can't believe I'm still saying that, then it's going to be very difficult to attract players. So I don't think it's a terrible thing that we have urgency in trying to bring players in, especially ones that we already know. I mean, Charlie, what do you think, mate?
You're muted,
Charlie. You're muted.
No, I'm not.
I should have
I'm
just
not
let him
that keen on it.
Yeah, just
mate,
kept going.
I'm not that keen on it, to be honest, the Felix signing. Like, obviously, I'll support him because he's here like every player, but it just feels very unnecessary, in my opinion. We've basically signed him so we can sell Gallagher. That, for me, is never a good basis to be doing business on. We weren't interested in him before, whatever people want to think. We absolutely weren't. He's been there all summer. We decided to go from already on over him in the first place anyway. But now that he's here, look, he's another one of those players that likes playing in the half space, picking up, space in the pockets, playing off the striker. Hasn't really got any end products. Let's be totally honest about it. He doesn't. That there's time for that to improve. He's still only 24, but if we're being honest, this guy's not had a good season, really, in my opinion, since he left Benfica. That's going on 3-4 years now. And people are acting like he's going to be some sort of savior at Chelsea. Yeah, it's another decent option to have. He'll get minutes, but we didn't need him. Like, no one at the start of the window would have said on a list of players that Chelsea should look to sign this summer, Joao Felix would not be on that list. He wouldn't be on that list. He was on no one's list that we should be signing this summer. So why are people now gassing it up like it's some amazing signing? Not one single person. You could list 10 players or whatever that Chelsea should have signed this summer at the start of the window. Felix will be on barely any of those. And if he is, he'd be down near the bottom. So, look, I hope he does well. The price seems reasonable, considering how much he cost only a few years ago. But there's a lot of question marks over it. Yeah, it's great that he's bought into the wage structure. Yes, it's great that he wants to be here. But it
benefits him, though. It does benefit him.
No one else wants him. So, of course, he wants to fucking be here because he's his only way out of Atletico Madrid where he doesn't want to be. So, of course, he wants to be here.
He did sign a contract extension there as well, which I never understood. I mean, I don't know if that was a pay rise or
pay rise, like, and then he can leave or something. I don't know. But look, I'll support him, but I'm definitely, I'm not really as excited as a lot of people are by it. But I'd love to be proven wrong, and I hope he does prove me wrong. But I'm not feeling the excitement surrounding the Felix signing.
I just think it's an improvement. I'm not
saying on what.
I think it's an improvement on Sterling. I think.
Yeah, but they're not going to play. They don't play the same position though.
But I think that he will play in that position. I think.
You think he'll be on the left wing?
I think he'll play on the left. I don't see why you would play Nkunku on the left when you get the best out of him in the middle. I don't understand why Chukwuemeka wouldn't get minutes, to be honest with you, when we're in a team that should be rotating with European football. I don't understand that. I find that a very strange transfer. I mean, Palmer prefers playing on the right. We spoke about that the other day, Charlie. Madueke plays on the right. So I think ultimately you want players that are versatile. I think Felix can play in a number of positions. We also know that Maresca likes players that can do different things. You might not want a typical winger, right? You want someone that might invert a little bit more. Felix is a good player for that. So for me, it's just an upgrade. I think it really is an upgrade. I mean, people can say what they want. I don't think he's Chelsea's saviour. I agree with you on that. I do think he's an upgrade. I think he's an improvement.
Yeah, but
whether that's a big improvement or not, still an improvement.
But he's probably like your improvement, mate. If Sterling was like an iPhone 7, you'd want like an iPhone 10 or 11, bro. This is like an iPhone 9. It's a little improvement.
A 9's better than a 7.
Well, it is, but like, do you know what I mean? It's not a major improvement, is it? So look, I'd love to be wrong, but I'm just not feeling the excitement, to be honest. But score a few goals, do your thing, and can easily be won over, and I hope I am. But I just like the one position we need to address still hasn't been addressed, and this is just like a signing for signing's sake, so that we can sell someone else. That's the only reason we've bought him, is so we can sell Gallagher. Yeah. And I'll die on that hill. Like, people can pretend otherwise. I'm just not buying it. He's the only reason we've signed him is to get rid of Gallagher.
But I would have always signed Felix over on Meridian. Right, so I
but the club didn't think that. They had the chance to do that, and they didn't do it.
What do you mean they didn't?
They went in for
Meridian. That deal was all done.
They pulled out.
Yeah,
pulled out, or it fell through, or whatever happened to it.
But Alex,
I believe that part of the reason for that is because I think there was an injury.
So then why didn't they go
his
for in the
ankle.
first place then? Why did they have all that Almiron deal agreed
Alex,
to then
because it
change
would
their
have
minds?
jeopardised the Gallagher deal. That was the whole thing. Obviously, us pulling out for Samu and Morodion meant that the Gallagher deal was put on hold for that reason. So I think that's where it kind of went in a position where Chelsea kind of had to go for another Atletico player just so that that deal could go through. At least that's how I see it, because the deals weren't happening as in the interest for the player happened after. Like, Joao Felix's name was only raised after we understood that the deal had collapsed with Morodion. If they were at the same time, then yeah, you could probably argue that. But I just simply think that us collapsing or not going through with Morodion meant that the Gallagher deal was then jeopardised. So I think Chelsea kind of had to move and pretend. I mean, the thing is, they were kind of very adamant and said that these are two separate deals. And I think they really wanted us to believe it, so that, you know, we never thought for a second that we're not able to go through and, you know, make a deal as easy as it should be. But yeah, I think things got complicated there, and I honestly agree with Charlie. I don't think that we were really ever wanting to get Felix.
So I mean, because I obviously I don't know, right? But I'm just thinking. I think there might be a chance that maybe they just changed their mind when they saw that there was an issue with Meridian. I think the two things I heard was ankle and naming rights or something, or player branding rights.
Oh yeah, his image rights. Yeah,
image rights. Those are the two things that I heard, and I don't know. Maybe they were genuine concerns, and that's why we pulled out. Maybe this is something where actually Paul Winstanley and Lawrence Stewart had a meeting and actually decided, you know what, we've got this one wrong, and Felix is the better player. I mean, for me, it's an upgrade on Meridian. I'm not saying that he's a savior, as I said, but
they're not but they're two different players though. One's a centre forward and one isn't.
But we didn't need Meridian, even though he is a centre forward.
We needed him. We needed him more than we needed Felix in terms of the position. Like, we didn't need another player like Felix. We need a striker. So look,
I disagree with that, Charlie. I disagree. I
think we needed a striker.
No, I think we need a striker. I don't think we need Meridian. I think we need Felix more than him, 100%. As I said, you know, he can play in different positions. He will play ahead of Mudryk, in my opinion. He is an upgrade on Sterling. Sterling's leaving, so actually, I think the timing is quite good in that sense. It will be tough to get rid of him, but I think if he cares about his career, he'll go. If he doesn't, then he'll stay. I think that, ultimately he's going to either take a massive pay cut in Europe, or he's going to go to Saudi, or he's going to do a Sancho or something like that and just sit on the bench. Who knows? But I mean, Sancho's another player we can speak about as well. I just don't think it's as bad as you're saying it is. I mean, if I was to rate it out of 10, I'd say this is like a 7 out of 10 transfer. It's all right.
But yeah, is that just based on the price though?
I think that we're getting a good price for it. I think it's a fair price. And I think he's an upgrade on what we have. So I think he improves the squad, to be honest with you. So I don't understand why people would be negative about Joao Felix. But having said that, I don't think that he's the player that pushes us to be top 4 contenders. I don't think that he's that player. I think Osimhen is the final push that we need, and that bit of quality.
That's the thing, I think, because, sorry, Charlie, I just wanted to say that it's not necessarily like that we have a negative attitude towards like Joao Felix as a player himself. It's more the fact that, and I agree with Charlie, that the bigger priority was always to kind of sign a striker. So if that gets done at the end of this transfer window, we've got Felix, then perfect. That's fair enough. I'm open to seeing the player develop play. But if we don't, I think that's where we kind of question it, if that makes sense. It's not necessarily, oh, I don't want Joao Felix at the club. It's no, I do. Okay, fair enough. But I also want the striker, because it's been the number one priority for as long as we've been talking about transfers now. So yeah, I think that's just the thing.
I think it will come down to deadline day with Osimhen, to be honest with you. I think it will be a very last minute transfer. I think right now it's actually not a priority. In terms of the immediate short term, I'm just talking about the window itself. I think that the priority is obviously moving players on and getting rid of them. That's where the main focus lies. I mean, we've got to get rid of 25 players or something like that, something stupid. So that's where a lot of our investment is going to go in terms of the time and resources upstairs. But yeah, I think Osimhen depends on the player, not the club. I don't think we're going to struggle to cough up the money for the transfer. I think, honestly,
we want a loan deal
for 80 million, then
we're not going to pay the money for him this window. We only want a loan deal. Like, the only way he'll come is a loan with an obligation. He won't come on a straight loan, and we won't pay outright.
If it's an obligation, then I think that's fine, right?
Yeah, that's fine. But I don't see us buying him outright this summer.
Yeah, and that's still good business, right? So if we can agree to do something like that, then that would be fantastic. I don't actually think that's going to be the issue, though. I think that if there's an obligation to buy, Napoli will still accept it. I think it's wages. That would be the main issue. I mean, what's he on at Napoli at the moment? Does anyone know?
Well, I don't know. It's like 11 or 12 million euros net per season. Well, I don't know how much.
Does that work out to a week?
Yeah, it's all right, isn't it? It's okay.
I'm just a bit concerned that we're 10, 11 days away from the end of the window, and the one position we needed to fill for the longest time possible still isn't filled. And
200 grand.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's around that. Could be a bit more. I don't actually know, but yeah, it's still not filled, and you're leaving. Osimhen's not had much of a pre-season. He's frozen out at Napoli. He's kind of training on his own or with the younger side there. He's not played any matches or any games. And if he does come in on a deadline day, he's coming in with minimal match fitness, and he's being asked to perform a big task, and everyone's going to be looking at him, waiting for him to slip up. I get it. It's a complex deal to do, but if this was your number one priority all window, you should have found a way to do it. You should have found a way to do it by now. I'm not a business person, but with 10 days left in the window, surely you should have found a way to do it by now. Surely you should have found a way to sell Lukaku by now to Napoli. You've been speaking for months about this. What are you possibly still speaking about in these meetings or whatever, or conversations when you're discussing Lukaku, you're discussing Osimhen? What is there left to discuss? The terms.
I think they're penny
just playing poker. Just playing a poker game. They're just literally just waiting. I
think you're absolutely right there. Definitely.
But then both teams are just going to end up accepting a deal that doesn't really suit either of them for much less than they wanted in the first place.
That's how it goes, especially with the Italians.
What's going to happen? We're going to accept. We're going to we rejected that Lukaku bid because we want the exit clause. We'll probably end up accepting maybe £3 or £4 million more than that initial offer, and Napoli will come to a compromise on Osimhen because both teams don't want those players on their books come the end of the window. It's just a massive game of poker, basically. But it is kind of frustrating that the most important position on the pitch that we've needed to fill for so long, and you can see the difference a top goalkeeper and a top striker makes in a team, and we're leaving it so late.
Yeah. To be fair, it's funny, isn't it? Because last year exits happened very quickly at the start of the window. This time it's the other way around. This time we immediately kind of bought players. Obviously, Tosin came on a free. We made some kind of low money signings just here and there, a bit kind of random again. And now we've left kind of the big exits, or, there's so much to kind of offload and move on at the very end. It almost kind of makes me think that maybe there's some. I love that I've kind of come up with all these little conspiracy theories because I'm just wondering how they're kind of handling business. But it makes me kind of think that they were more worried about who they could bring in, and kind of wanted to sort of gather as many players as they could at the start, and then just sort of based off what they managed to buy, then kind of see who they'd loan out and or sell and move on. Because last year the strategy was much better because we knew we needed to move a lot of players on, and it was easier that way because you kind of already had started thinking, where they could go and offers were coming in. But this time it's very different because I feel like we didn't really know who we kind of wanted at the end of the day, or at least staying, right? Because I mean, if you think about how many changes have happened at the club this summer, what makes us think that there really was any clarity at the very start of this window who was actually going to leave? And I guess it's something that they've kind of just been figuring out over summer, hence why it's taken so long to move players on. Yet we've signed a bunch of, no offense to the players, a bunch of random players, really.
I mean, I haven't heard of a lot of the players we've signed, but I mean, some of them, from what I've seen, I mean, I really like Vega. I think he looks like a good addition at left back. Obviously, he'll be replacing Chilwell. I think Dewsbury Hall as well is a player that, I mean, he didn't make much of an impact against City. We all know that. But I think that he's quite a good squad player to have. He suits the system. He knows how to play under Maresca. He's got a point to prove. So I don't think all of the players are bad signings. You've got to remember as well, the scouts that we have in terms of what we have with Stuart, with Stanley. I mean, these guys worked at, was it Monaco and Brighton? So they're fishing in markets that they're very familiar with, right? But we've never fished in those markets before. You know, they're trying to pick gems out for basically pennies, right? Compared to what a top club would pay 3-4 years down the line when they're established players. So I don't necessarily think it's a terrible strategy. I just think that when you do that, you need the cherry on top as well. You need that bit of quality, and that helps everyone develop ultimately. I mean, Sterling was meant to be one of those players that was mentoring Mudryk, and you know, we needed that experience. But if you don't have the quality as well, it's never going to work. I do think it's slightly coincidental. I don't think that it's an accident that Chilwell's going and Sterling as well. I think that Maresca is obviously communicating with the club. I think they're definitely on the same page. So I think that's good in that sense. You've got some unity in terms of the management, but also from a player perspective, it's just hell, isn't it? Because as soon as the club doesn't want you, you're out. And it's very clear what our strategy has been after the first summer when we dished out all those big contracts. Now we're just trying to reverse those mistakes. And we are doing it. We really are. But it's brutal. It is absolutely brutal. From a business perspective, you almost have to take your hat off to Clear Lake, because what they are doing and the fact that they've able to reduce our wage structure by more than half of what it was under Abramovich. It was 200,000. Now it's 60,000 on average. I don't know if that's gone up because of Felix. You know, that's great, but the performances need to match. And if you're an efficient club that doesn't need to spend a lot of money, you know, Liverpool got a lot of credit for it. That's great. But if you're not getting the results, then ultimately you're going to get some complaints as well.
Yeah. But I think like with the outgoings, though, like obviously it's not ideal to leave it so late, because then you leave yourself open to teams just waiting right until the final few days, knowing they're going to get a discounted deal. Like, why would you come in early when you know that Chelsea actively want these players out? Why would you just not wait as long as possible when we want to get rid of these players and we're going to end up accepting less than we actually want? So, you know, stances are already changing. Chelsea wanted to sell Broja permanently. Now they're open to a loan with an obligation. You know, they're open to loan moves now for certain players that they did want to sell. Now, that's obviously probably an acceptance that, one, they've left things too late, and two, actually, maybe it's proven a lot more difficult to move some of these guys on than we first thought it would have been. You know, someone like Broja, who people think is kind of a talented player, like, no disrespect to Ipswich, but this is a guy that's being linked with the newly promoted side that, you know, and
I still don't think he starts for Ipswich, Charlie. I said this the other day. I still don't think he starts for Ipswich.
But that's the only we're very good at selling players. You know, we get very good deals for selling players. My concern would be that obviously when you're leaving a lot of outgoings so late in the window, you're not going to get anywhere near as much money as what you originally thought you might have done, because teams are just going to take advantage of the fact that you're desperate at the end of the day. And we are desperate to move players on. We've still got Lukaku here. We've still got Kepa here. We've still got Chalobah here, who they obviously want to move on. To name three, obviously Gallagher's got to finally complete his move to Atletico, so that's one less. But Kepa's still here as well. Number of youngsters need to find loans and whatnot. A few more squad players might be moved on. So there's a lot of work to do. But at least now we can really purely focus on outgoings, and the only other incoming we should be looking at is Osimhen.
I've got a question. I mean, I know there's a limit on how many loans you can do.
International loans, yeah.
Right. Okay. So in terms of loans with obligations to buy, I mean, is there a cap on that as well?
There's no cap on. There's a limited amount of international loans. I think it's maybe 6 or 7, and then other domestic loans, as many as you like, I think. So,
I didn't even know that. Right.
Yeah. So that's why the international loan spots are so important, because 3 of them will be Strasbourg, because we always send 3 there, and then the rest you kind of got to pick sort of who you think deserves them, really, because I suppose you might get a better quality of team abroad, maybe potentially. I don't really know, but there's some interesting decisions that have got to be made there as well, and there's not a lot of time left to do it. And like, loans for youngsters is so important. You know, if you get it right, it can make a big difference. And, you know, we saw with Hutchinson, one good loan to Ipswich, you know, that went from a free transfer player a couple of years ago to a £20 million plus sale. So if you get it right, you know, it's financially lucrative as well, which we know the ownership are kind of very keen on. But we've seen us get too many loans wrong recently. Last season, Santos recalled halfway through from Forest. Moreira was recalled from Lyon in January. That Fofana was recalled. There's loads of them that we didn't get right. So that's something we've got to get right, and the clock is ticking on it.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. So I think that the owners and just the club as a whole got a lot of credit for a lot of the business they did last summer. And I would like to say the same thing again. I'd like to say the same thing again. I mean, we all know that what we need, and that will shut fans up, right? We know what we need. So
I'm going to hold fire on sort of criticising the window until it closes. Because it's like
we love ourselves a deadline day transfer.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfair to say it's been a bit it's not unfair to say that, but it has been slightly underwhelming so far.
I wouldn't say it's been underwhelming.
No, but Neto and Felix lifts it up a little bit, but I can't pretend like this is a good window if no more players come in. I know that. But
all you have is Dominic Solanke. He's actually a decent player, isn't he? But
he's not £65 million.
When do they go out and spend that much money? I mean, it's not boring in terms of the money we're spending. It's just the players that we're using that money to get.
It's not even necessarily the players. It's just the fact that this. I mean, obviously it's a big if at the moment still, but if no more players come in this window, this can't go down as a good window, because once again, it's the most important position on the pitch to address has been left unaddressed. So I'm hoping that we can sort something out, because otherwise, this can't go down as a good window in my book.
What's your take on it, Nina?
No, I agree. I said, again, if we don't sign a striker, then for me, this window just simply isn't good enough, because we're still going to have some of the same problems, like I keep saying, moving forward. And I mean, I think I agree. I think Neto lifts it a little bit. I think, again, just because it was a bit out of the blue, bit like a kind of similar way to Cole Palmer. There weren't many conversations about it. We just kind of, saw the obviously journalists say that we're in for him. But I mean, I can't say that the players Dewsbury Hall, again, I was quite skeptical, didn't really know what to expect. Vega, again, can't say I knew anything really about him. Kellyman, again, didn't really blink at that transfer.
I never understood that transfer.
It's a PSR transfer. We literally bought him so we could get more money from Martin
for a good deal.
Yeah, but we got a bit of an extra money.
This other guy.
We got extra money for Martin because we agreed to buy Kellyman.
He's worth that, Charlie. He's worth that.
I think he is. But I mean, 19 million pounds on someone that's at the moment in a development squad is a shambles.
It's ridiculous, mate. Absolutely ridiculous, right? So of course there's going to be criticism. I know I spoke about Felix and all that. I mean, I'm not saying it's all good. There's some very big question marks as well.
But imagine how crazy though if we were unsatisfied with a window where we've bought so many players, and other rival fans are literally now just taking the mickey, saying do you know what I mean?
No, it's not unsatisfied from a sense that that we've not invested or we've not bought players in. It'll just be unsatisfied because it's not addressing what needs to be addressed. That's where the dissatisfaction comes from.
I mean, I spoke with Tony. I don't know, Tony, who does Chelsea SW6. I spoke with him, I think it was after the Inter Milan game, and he said, listen, you can't doubt the ambition from the owners because of the money they've spent.
No, not at all.
The ambition is
there. This is why there's a big split, and some fans really don't have a problem with Clearlake. I mean, I spoke with an American friend of mine. He likes them. He thinks they're not bad at all. He thinks they're good for the club. And then you see Johnny Minerals and these other guys, and they think he's the worst thing ever. So it's difficult. There's two sides to every story, but I suppose in both ways, they're all right. It's just which one, it's which side you want to look at more closely. I mean, we are spending ridiculous amounts, but are those signings?
It will only be worth it if results are there and if the targets are met. Yeah.
I mean, look, these signings are only worth it, or they're only good business if they work out. It's all very well saying, Felix at 38 million or whatever is good business. It's only good business if he does well. Do you know what I mean? If he comes in and he's crap, it's shocking business because you've paid 40 million quid for someone that we didn't even want in the first place, and to compound it, he would have been shit. So, it's all relative, isn't it? Everyone wants all these players to do well, But I think it's right to have some level of skepticism surrounding some of these signings because a lot of them are kind of unknown players that we're taking a gamble on. Like Felix is obviously more proven, of course he is, but that's still a huge gamble because he's not really done anything since he left Benfica. You know, there's a reason why big clubs haven't wanted him. So despite his obvious talent, and there is room to improve, that's still a huge gamble and a risk. You know, you might look at it as a risk worth taking at that price for someone with that much potential, but there's no guarantee any of these guys become as good as we think they're going to become. And I think that's where a lot of people's major issue with this kind of model is that it's essentially all based on a massive gamble. You're buying these players based on a projection from data that they're going to become as good as you think they are. And the reality is not all of them will, and only a select few are going to. So you are basing your whole model on a gamble at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, even though we have such a big squad, obviously we're not making the same mistake that we made when we had Graham Potter and putting them all together. We've split them into two different groups. I think as it stands, there's 26 players training with Enzo Maresca. 4 of them are players that will probably leave. I think it's Sterling, Petrovic, Chilwell, and who's the other one? Someone else. Those are the 3 that pop into my head. So, I mean, we are playing it smarter in terms of that side of things. I think it's good that you're splitting the 2 groups up. Maresca has a little bit more of an idea who he's actually going to be working with rather than just make everyone happy. But yeah, I mean, let's move on. I mean, where do you see Raheem Sterling finishing the window? Do you see him at Chelsea, or do you think he's going somewhere else?
I think he'll still be here. I'll be honest. Like, it'll be interesting to see how this develops because he's been left out the squad for this game against City, which it was a surprise. Maybe not a surprise that he wouldn't have started, but a surprise not to see him in the squad at all. He did a reasonable pre-season by his standards. We know that he's happy in London. He's obviously on a ridiculous contract. I think it's obvious that Chelsea have been looking to get this contract off the books probably for the last 12, 18 months, even as far back as that, I reckon. It's one of those old contracts per se that's not heavily incentivized. It's a large base wage and it's, takes him well into his 30s and whatnot on this 5-year deal. They want to move him on. Now, you could look at him being left out as just a purely technical decision, like Maresca described it, or you could see it as, right, this is our first move to you and a message that, mate, you need to find a new club, potentially. Now, it'll be interesting to see whether he's in the squad for Thursday's game, whether he's in the squad for the game against Wolves on Sunday. Look, I think it's clear that Chelsea wants Sterling out. And in my opinion, this is kind of the first step to sort of maybe letting him know that he's surplus to requirements. Because for him to not be in the squad, as whatever we think of him, it's a little bit mad that he wasn't even in the matchday squad. I just think we're going to find it very difficult to move him on. Unless Chelsea say to him, look, if you don't leave, you're literally going to spend the next year, the next season, not playing, and you're just going to be training away from the first team. So I'll be interested to see how this develops. What actual market is there? We know that he doesn't want to go to Saudi. What market is there for Raheem Sterling in the Premier League? Because I don't look at him as someone that would go and play in Europe. I mean, I could be totally wrong, but I feel that he's someone that would remain in the Premier League. He has to take a pay cut wherever he goes. No one's paying him the money we're paying him. I just think it's quite a complex situation and a really difficult one where all options are still on the table. He could be, he could still have a role to play this season. He could decide to move on. But I think it's clear that he's definitely not as big a part of the plans as he perhaps thought he would have been. And it's a big call to leave out someone like that. But for me, as I said, I think it's the first sort of step and the first maybe not subtle message, but the first message in his direction to say, look, mate, we want to move you on. If you want to stay, fine or whatever, but you're not going to be in the matchday squad on some occasions. And if that's fine with you, then that's fine with you. But I just worry about the money. What sort of fee are we asking for? And what market is there for him? So regrettably, I think he'll still be here.
I think if we were going to get a fee, I think a realistic fee, providing 20, he takes
25 or 30.
I'd say 20, to be honest with you.
20.
I do. I'd say
Didn't we get him for 60 or 50 or
It's
something like
50
that?
mil
We got
3
him
years
for
ago.
50. I think that we get 20 million for him. You've got to bear in mind if he's on 350 grand a week, I think any Premier League club that brings him in would probably give him a max of 150. I don't think he's worth more than that. His stats say the same thing. He's probably worth less than
That's
100.
what it's at, yeah. About 150 is fair.
You know, he has declined every season for the last 4 years. He wasn't getting any better under Guardiola at City. His game time was going down. He came in to be the main man at Chelsea. He didn't perform in his first season. You know what? You can almost say, fair enough. Not a very stable club. Very different to Man City. You might need time to adapt. Year 2 comes around. Pochettino's still persisting with Sterling, even though we say, please, Mudryk just scored in the last game. Can't you start him? Mudryk's on the bench. Sterling starts. And he kept letting us down. So this is not a revelation. This is something that needed to happen. The fact that finances are obviously heavily involved is the main catalyst. But as fans, we know that from a football standpoint, if this was the good old days and the managers were all like Mourinho's, and if they wanted someone out, they could just get them out. This is what we would do, right? So it's no different in that sense. But this is financial. I think that honestly, the club that comes to mind, if I generally could see one, I think it would be Crystal Palace. To be honest with you, I think that they've got rid of Elise. They could spend 20 million, and they could probably dish out a decent contract for Sterling, but nowhere near what he's on at the moment. I mean, we're talking 50% of that. Apart from that, I don't see a place for him in the Premier League. I don't see. I mean, Crystal Palace in London as well. You got to remember that he came to London to be with his family. That's still plausible. In South London, Juventus are interested. They're not going to cough up 350 grand a week. So then it's like we just spoke about earlier. You are left with the UAE, Saudi, and if
he's
if
not
you're not
going there.
interested in a change of lifestyle, then you're going to have to take a pay cut, or you're going to have to sit in the stands. You won't even sit on the bench. We talk about bench warmers. He's a stand warmer. So that's the way I see it for Sterling.
But he'd happily collect his money though. But I think with Sterling is he still wants to play. I think that's the thing with him. If it is about the money, and obviously family's a factor, but I think he still wants to play competitive football, play in a competitive league. I think that's partly maybe why with the statement, and I don't defend the statement because I think the timing was off and everything about it just felt really weird, because obviously every player wants clarity with where and how things are going to look. Most of them might have to move in like a week and a half to some freaking European country because they've just been told. So every player's in the same boat, wondering the same thing. But I think obviously his camp kind of probably want to figure out this big money move or where he could probably play. And I mean, I don't know, for me, I didn't even imagine staying in the Premier League's a possibility, because again, who pays him and who wants him, really, who pays that fee? But yeah, with Sterling, again, I think there's a sense of entitlement just because of the player he is and what he's won and achieved with City, and coming to Chelsea and kind of expecting that he'd be this main man. And we painted him out, well, we hoped he would be the main man. Him and Aubameyang were kind of brought in as the Premier League proven players that would really strengthen our attack and take us to that next level. Didn't really happen. I don't think he kicked on well, but I think with Sterling, there's always been a bit more of an entitlement because, he's a more senior player. He gets more money. He's been around for longer, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're deserving to start over, any of our other players. So, yeah, I just think, again, no one's got clarity. Everyone wants clarity. That's the thing. But yeah, again, I'd rather us move Sterling on purely. Again, I've not been his biggest fan. I have been open to seeing how he gets on and things. But, when you're kind of given this player who's obviously way past his prime and just now obviously on a decline, he's not going to get better next season. He's not going to get better the season after. So you're looking at potentially just accepting some mediocre forward now, someone who might bring you goals. Yeah, he has been clutch for us at times. He's not had his greatest games, but he'll score a free kick or provide us an assist or whatever. But I don't think that's good enough. And frankly, with where the direction that the club's now moving in, where we are trying to bring in these younger players and award them. You know, you play well, you score, or you perform, you get paid more. And I think that's how it should be. I think that's the structure and the kind of ideology we're going for as a club, which makes sense. So yeah, I don't think he's really part of the plans anymore. And I think, you know, Maresca had a very good response to that. Yeah, oh, I want Sterling, but I also want 30 players. You know, this is football, mate. You know, you've been around, you've seen the good days, but you should know better, really, that that's just how it goes sometimes.
It's interesting as well, isn't it? I mean, everyone knows I was a fan of Poch. I mean, the three of us defended him for the whole season.
Poch fans.
And I still don't believe we should have sacked him, because a lot of the problems we have, if we would have kept Poch and just supported him as a manager, I'm talking about the ownership here, we wouldn't have half of the problems we've got now.
Start a Poch-in campaign, get him back from America.
Oh my God, the Americans are chuffed. I mean, I think it's a great appointment for them, although I still think that, to be honest, I don't understand why he took that job, but fair play to him. But, you know, if we still had Pochettino and we actually supported him, we wouldn't have the issues that we have with Gallagher. That's divided the fan base. Our defence would be much more solid with a player like Chalobah. We could have still brought in Tosin, for example. You know, that would have been a good addition. I think it was starting to come together. Cucurella was performing, Gusto was performing, you know, and then you've got Fofana and James coming back. And I think Caicedo, you were getting the best out of Caicedo with Pochettino. Jackson as well, for me, probably the most improved player from last season. I wouldn't put Palmer in that category because we didn't have him at the season before. He was just at that level the whole time. So I think genuinely Jackson improved so much. So we're just rebranding the whole squad, aren't we? The style of football, everything. One thing I do like about Maresca is he is just straight to the point. And I almost think that it was nice to have Poch come in and give the players, you know, that sort of, I don't know what the word is, put your arm over someone's shoulder, you know. I'm here to help, you know, not going against his players, always backing his team. Whereas I think Maresca is a little bit more brutal, but I don't think that's a bad thing if we're trying to push for top four. You know, these guys have experienced the Premier League, some of them for a couple of seasons now. I think the time for Mr. Nice Guy is over in that sense. But yeah, I like his decisiveness. I really do. And especially the fact that he's coming out publicly. The Chilwell one's a little bit of an interesting situation because you didn't have to come out publicly and say that.
No, but he wouldn't have said that. I don't think he said anything there that he wouldn't have already told Chilwell. And Chilwell's not an idiot. He played 64 minutes in pre-season. He knows he's not part of the plans.
Yeah, so I think in that sense, as long as he did speak to the player beforehand, I don't think it's a terrible thing. But you don't have to say these things publicly. You don't. I
just think it's quite refreshing to have that level of honesty from a manager. You know, just say it how it is. Yeah. And I think, look, whether it's good news or bad news for the player, players appreciate that honesty. You know, just say it how it is. Let's not pretend that I'm part of the plans. Like, if it's good news or bad news, just be honest about it. You know,
I don't think Sterling appreciates it though.
Well, you know, it is what it is, isn't it? At the end of the day, like, it's, you know, they can't all stay. So some of them are going to have to be moved on.
No, it's absolutely right. I mean, we are big link with Sancho as well. For me, it's just a bit of a mere link. I don't really think there's anything genuine about it, especially when you look at the wage structure. I mean, he's earning God knows how much at United.
They're not paying that.
Why is he taking a pay cut to come to Chelsea? But do you think it's something that is attainable, and do you take it seriously?
No, I don't take it seriously. I mean, you can never rule anything out with us in the transfer window, but it would just be, I don't know, it would just show that we've not really got an idea what we're doing. Why would we need another attacking player? Even if Sterling leaves, right, Felix has kind of taken that space in the squad anyway. So it literally doesn't make any sense on any level whatsoever. As you say, the wages are extortionate. Transfer fees about 40 mil, not ridiculous for someone of his age and his potential. You know, we know he's a good footballer, but literally there's not one single way in which it would make any sense whatsoever. And that report from The Athletic was like saying that some figures at United think Chelsea might make an approach. I'm not really, I don't know whether they're thinking that just based on the fact that we know we sort of try and sign anything and anyone, or whether they've got some sort of genuine indication from somewhere that we might make an approach. But yeah, I mean, you can never say never with us in the window, but yeah, this one, I can't see this happening. I don't really think this has got any legs at all.
No, neither do I. That's fair. You were both at the City game on the weekend. We spoke about this the other day as well, Charlie. The situation when it comes to Stamford Bridge. I mean, there's a video on Twitter that I saw. I don't know if you saw it. It was Enzo Maresca looking behind him in the East Stand. People are complaining. It's his first game in the Premier League. You think they'd be supportive, and he's going, like, why are you booing your own team? Like, why are you doing that? And there were
first game of the season. Yeah, it's madness.
If that isn't like toxicity at its finest, then I don't know what is. Because we always complain about Arsenal. I remember when Granit Xhaka walked off the pitch and they booed him. I mean, at least that was, towards the latter end of the season. You're fed up by that point. We haven't even reached game week 2. And we're already booing our own team. I mean, this is just crazy to me.
But I think there's like a lot of fans are very entitled still. A lot of fans can't remove themselves from the past. They simply can't, or they're not prepared to remove themselves from the past. They're not prepared to accept reality. And people need to wake up and realize that Maresca's been appointed to play this style of football. We're going to be playing this style of football. If you don't like it, don't watch it. Don't come to the ground.
Don't come to the bridge.
Don't come then. Don't come. If you don't like it, don't come. This is how we're going to play football. Whether you agree with it or not is irrelevant. But when you come to that stadium, support the team and get behind their team. And yeah, of course, everyone's got a right to criticise. But not the first fucking game with a new manager. Like, no wonder players prefer playing away from home. You've got Caicedo coming out last season at one point. He prefers playing away from home. I don't know about you, but if I was a player, I wouldn't want to play at Stamford Bridge as a Chelsea player. Why would you? The support's crap, the atmosphere's dog shit, and we're creating an environment that young players don't want to play in. Maybe we're not being expressive because they're afraid if they're expressive, they're just going to get jumped on for giving the ball away or whatever it might be. Like, this is not a good support. This is not a good home atmosphere. It's not a good anything. And look, I get it. People support the club in different ways, but there's a time and a place for expressing dissatisfaction. And the first game of a new manager is not the place for it. And people are in for a rude awakening. If you're groaning about building up from the back, that's what this guy's been appointed to do. This is how we're going to play. So if you don't like it, maybe it's better you go and support a different team, or you just don't come.
Period. Words. It's so true. And also, I read something on Twitter and I can't remember who tweeted it, so I don't take any credit for it, but it said something like, as matchday going fans, a lot of fans in recent time have been expecting the players to ignite the fans as opposed to the other way around. And I think that's so true. Like, we go there expecting the players obviously to play good football, perform well, score goals so we can celebrate it. Because we've seen time and time again, we score a goal and that's when the atmosphere livens up a little bit. It's very often that, we'll do our liquidated chant, we'll do the carefree Chelsea at the start, and then it just very quickly dies down.
Than us in our own ground. Do you know exactly. Most away fans, right, are louder than us in our own ground. In fact,
and watch when Conference League starts, the fans that are going to come to the bridge
on Thursday night, Servette fans will be louder than us. They will.
Easily, 100%.
And that doesn't reflect well on the fan base. And I get it. A lot of clubs have got a problem. It's a lot of tourists. Premier League football is a tourist attraction these days. And look, the away support is different.
Well, you say that, Charlie. I mean, I offered a ticket to Callum, the camera guy.
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, they're not for me. They're for some friends of mine. They're tourists." They thought it was Champions League, so they're not interested anymore.
But look, it's
fallen.
It's a problem. It is a problem, and like it's not a new conversation about the sort of the environment, the home support. This is not a new conversation. This has been a conversation that's been going on for years and years now. And you're right, the role of a supporter is massive. It can make such a huge difference if you're behind the team, willing them on. That can make a big, big difference. And like, players feed off that energy, just like players will feed off negativity from the crowd. So yeah, you can moan and groan. Of course you can, you're within your rights to do that. But there's a time and a place for it. And the first game of the season is not it.
It's not it.
And we've got to be directing your anger at the right people. Directing the anger at the manager or the players is not where it should be directed at. So I get it that everyone's got a right to express their opinions, but there's a time and a place for it. And this young group of players and this project or whatever, 3 years in now, this is never going to get going unless people are patient and supportive. It's just never going to happen. So if you're happy with constantly changing managers, I mean, this fan base would have hounded Pep out if we'd appointed him. They would have hounded him out within a year. This is how we play, right? This is how we're going to play. Maresca's been appointed to play this way. We're going to play this way, and that's that. You know, no amount of moaning or groaning is going to change that. This is how we're going to play under this manager because that's what he's specifically been brought in to do. So if people don't like it, then that's on them. But they need to educate themselves and understand that this is how we're going to play, and voice your opinions. You know, time and a place. And that's not it, because it's not helpful. You know, it's not helpful in any way whatsoever to anyone.
It's true, mate. And also, I mean, Lewis made a great point after that, which I completely agree with. He's going, you're 2-0 down or you're 1-0 down. What do the fans chant?
Conor Gallagher.
Yeah, so stupid.
Gallagher. I didn't get it either. I'm thinking
it's just brain dead. It's just idiots at the end of the day.
Oh, mate, I mean, Thiago Silva. I mean, I get a bit of inspiration from, you know, Thiago. Whoa.
Yeah, that's different.
You know, we can get behind that. He's a legend. We chant about Lampard, Terry. Silva's a legend. Come on. Not Gallagher. I mean, that for me that's embarrassing. That is. We laughed at Arsenal. They had a banter error, right? Their decline, their demise was gradual. 10, 15 years. And then they lost it. They cracked.
But can't I just say, right?
Mate, we're in year 3 of the process.
Can I just quickly say that, right?
We're finished. Well, a lot of fans are just mentally
gone. But there's such a recency bias here, right? So many people don't realize. So many people think the demise is set in since these new owners came in. We have not challenged or been anywhere near winning the Premier League since we won it under Antonio Conte. We have been nowhere near. So this demise is not a recent thing. We have been on the decline domestically. We've just been on the decline as a club in general. Although we won the Champions League in 21, you know, a few trophies patched it up. Fantastic. We're very grateful for those. But we've been on a decline domestically in the league ever since we last won it. We have been nowhere near the league now for, 7 years? 6, 7 years now? We're nowhere near. And that will probably stretch to 10 years. So people that say, like, I'm the first one to criticize this ownership, but people need to realize that this demise is not just set in under these owners. This demise has been coming for a long time. You know, we have not been competitive in the Premier League since we won it. That's 7 years now. So let's not pretend that, you know, we're suddenly uncompetitive in the league since these guys came in. It's just not true. We've not been competitive in the league for multiple years now. And, you know, people love to have someone to blame. Like we all love what Roman did, but people just pretend he's perfect. He wasn't. We weren't competitive in the Premier League for the last, 4 years of his ownership, 5 years of his ownership, not competitive. And so let's be fair in this, you know. Yes, you know, things are not gone well under this new ownership, but this demise is not a sudden thing since they've taken over. It's not.
No, it's just a bit depressing, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. The mood is really.
But it's just reality, though, isn't it? Like you can't, you know, you've got to speak about things like, you know, there's no point being, you know, false positivity or whatever. You just got to be honest about things, and that is the truth. Whether people want to agree with that or not, fair enough. But
I mean, Nina, how long do you think it's going to take for us to get back into a position where we can challenge for the title and go and win Premier League?
I mean, I hope it's before I'm 30, and that's in like 7 years. So
I think it's a good 2 or 3 years.
I'll take that. I will take that. I mean, if that means that the project is working, if we can get there in 2-3 years, because that's how long it takes for a lot of these really, really young players to develop. But I still think that that's a stretch, to be honest with you, especially if we don't get things right this summer.
It's not going to be 2 years, and it won't be 3, guys. I'll tell you that.
You think it will be longer?
It'll be more. I think it will be more. simply put, you're watching, okay, you're looking at us. Can we all agree that we've pretty much reset kind of from the start? It's all kind of starting again, right, this season with the new manager and the new players we have. Yeah, okay, I guess there's certain foundations from players that we had last season that are kind of taking it into a second season, but it's an unknown season. Nobody can really say with confidence where we finish, or at least game week 1, you don't really know where it's going to go, right? And when you look at how other clubs are kind of kicking on, and, you look at Arsenal, they've been challenging now for, this will be their 3rd year where they're, hoping to win the league, building on that. You look at Man City, who, again, loads of people think they could make it 5 in a row. And, they probably could. That's not off the table. I think it's premature to think Man City fall off this season for, whatever other reason. I think they're very much up there. And, we saw against us, they warmed up quite nicely. But, you look at Liverpool, that's going to be interesting. I mean, they're transitioning, but they're very much in and around the top 3 there, and you can kind of expect them, maybe, I don't know, next season they could have some difficulties with a lot of like their key players that will leave, your Van Dijks, your Salahs, like whoever else goes. But you look at those teams and you think, they've now kind of had that foundation where it's been a few years now, right, of something building for, you look 6-7 years. You look at Liverpool with Klopp when he first arrived, and kind of that took long with him as well. But I just simply think that we are quite far away from, we're not miles away from obviously getting back into top 4, because I think we all agree that needs to be a priority this season. I just simply think in terms of being able to compete, yeah, we're far off. I think we're very far off.
I almost think in order for me to actually, well, I think if you're going to back a process, you need to see that is a process, and we haven't seen a process because we haven't had a manager here longer than a season, right? Mm-hmm. So that's not a process. That's not a project that I would believe in. In the modern day, I think you need to give managers time. I think it's very difficult to have an instant impact. I think that, honestly, despite how I will feel throughout the season, even if we finish 8th, I don't think sacking Maresca is a smart decision. I don't think it is. I think any manager that you brought in and gave a 5-year contract with an option to extend to 6, you have to give him time. It's boring. I mean, Charlie said it. It's boring, but it's true. And you made your bed, lay in it. And that's my stance on this situation. I still think we can finish in Europe, whether that's Europa Conference or even Champions League. I mean, fingers crossed for that. But I just don't see enough quality and end product at the moment. Yeah, everyone knows it's Osimhen. I mean, guys, before we round out the video, what's your message to Chelsea fans for the season? And where can you see things going?
Just got to be patient, basically. It's a boring message, that, but it's true. It's got to be patient, get behind the team, and let's see what happens.
Yeah, support the team. Like, there's no good.
Direct your anger at the right people.
Yeah, true. That's why I said I banned the word or the phrase Maresca out. If you want to direct out to anyone else, look further upstairs.
I think we'll just round it out with that. I mean, there you go.
There we go.
Mic drop. All righty. Well, guys, listen, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please do. It does help. Leave a thumbs up as well. We've got Nina's and Charlie's channels in the description. Subscribe to Blue Brother and Nina's Chelsea Corner. And listen, enjoy the rest of your week. Fingers crossed for Thursday. Up the Chelsea.